Before 1979, the Iranian Air Force was very good. It was American supplied, American trained. After 79, the Iranian Air Force came crashing down because of not having relations with the United States. So what they have done in recent years is to compensate for that by building up their drone capabilities. So pretty good drone capabilities on the part of the Iranians right now.
But Khamenei and the regime, by and large, and I would say before even Khamenei in 89, his predecessor Khomeini, these are not figures who ever prioritize the economy.
And you have seen in recent weeks the unrest inside of Iran. So Iranian population is very angry about the way they live, the way they're ruled, the state of their economy. We've seen unrest among ethnic minorities, including Azerbaijanis in Iran. So for these factors combined, internal realities, but also Iran having to worry about its foreign rivals, make the South Caucasus a particularly sensitive area.
So what does Iran gain from helping Russia in its war? I mean, aside from cold, hard cash.
Well, I'm not even sure if they're getting much cash. And this is the tragedy for the Iranian nation, because they have a ruling elite at the top that have turned their foreign policy into one where Iran is essentially beholden to Vladimir Putin. Iran doesn't have anywhere else to turn to. There is not much money probably coming back to Tehran because of the drones that Iranians are giving to Russia. But the Iranians are not in a position to say no to the Russians. We've seen this elsewhere. And that is, as I said, this is because Iran's become essentially a pawn in the hands of
Iran is also facing considerable domestic upheaval after the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini in the custody of Iran's morality police. What are those protesters asking for?
Well, these protesters are different from other protests we've seen in recent years because they are squarely asking for regime change. In the last few years, you could have seen protesters coming out and asking for reform of the existing Islamic Republic. The younger generation, Generation Z as they're called, people in the 15 to 25 age group that are mostly in the streets, they're asking for an overhaul of the entire system. They want the regime gone. And the terrifying part is the regime really doesn't have a menu to offer this youth in the streets. They don't know how to compromise with it, which means, worst case scenario, more bloodshed in coming days and weeks.
Iranian presidents, but let me put the Iranian presidents aside and say since 1989, and argue before 89, when Ayatollah Khamenei, the current supreme leader, became supreme leader. Before him, for 10 years, if you remember, there was another supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. So these two Iranian supreme leaders, unelected as they are, because the Iranian people did not choose them to be where they are, these two unelected officials, Khomeini from 79 to 89 and Khamenei from 89 to today, have over the years, 42 years to be precise, put their political interests, their very narrow political interests, which is about survival at the very minimum or maximizing power at best, above the national interest.
The U.S. has been in a tough position because, as you know, the Biden administration has been trying to resuscitate the nuclear deal from 2015 that the Trump administration walked away from. But to be honest, at this moment in time, it would send a wrong signal to the world if the Biden administration prioritizes the nuclear talks over providing whatever support, even moral support, to the protesters, because that's the long-term investment the United States needs to make in that country. It's the Iranian people, not the 80-year-old or 83-year-old Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, who, let's face it, he's anti-American in his DNA. He's not going to change his position on that. So why try and make friends with him? Instead, one should, if you're Washington, look to empower the Iranian people.
On October 18th, the State Department deputy spokesperson said this. Take a listen.
Russia deepening an alliance with Iran is something the whole world should, especially those in the region and across the world, frankly, should be seen as a profound threat.
What do you think of that, Alex? Is it a profound threat?
Well, you know, it's certainly a new type of a relationship. But the reality is these two individuals in Moscow and Tehran, Vladimir Putin and Ali Khamenei, have almost a quarter of a century of personal relationship, working relationship. So this isn't something new. Russia and Iran have been moving closer and closer over the last 22 years at least. And what has happened in terms of Russia's isolation for its invasion of Ukraine is they're desperate for partners, and existing partners like Iran are just just that much more important to him, as we've seen in the last few months. But it's not a new relationship. It's just becoming, as we just heard from State Department, a deeper relationship.
When the war over Karabakh happened in 2020, and they were equally dismayed by the fact that Turkey and Israel were the major partners of Azerbaijan in that military conflict. Turkey and Israel certainly are seen by Tehran as regional rivals. So to your question about what is it that Iran was surprised about or angry about, well, there are two elements here. One is Iran's regional rivals are suddenly having a bigger presence to Iran's immediate north. This is a concern for Iran. The Iranians also believe that also to some extent maybe the Turks might look to the South Caucasus as a region from which they can create instability inside of Iran as part of the regional rivalry. You have to remember there are 20 million more, perhaps, ethnic Azerbaijanis that live in Iran. So if you are Tehran, you're concerned about how other rival actors might look for ways to create instability. Now, is Israel doing that? Is Turkey doing that? Probably, certainly not to the extent that the Iranian regime says they are.
So what I'm saying is you have really essentially a fight here, as you put it. It's about being forced to do something or choose to do something. I, as someone who watched these protests in Iran, I haven't seen, although there have been cases of some Quran being burned by some of the protesters, but there have been few examples of that. The majority of the protesters are asking for being able to choose how they dress and be left alone, because they think that's a personal choice issue. Mm-hmm. So it is a fight about human dignity, at its core. Look, it is a culture war, mm-hmm. but I think it's more than that. I mean, I would say about 85% of the Iranians in this country of 85 million people are believers in a different political future. They don't want the Islamic Republic. So you got 15% of this country, but this 15% are the ones who have access to power, money, and the guns. So that's why you have a culture war, because the majority that wants a different way of life on all levels have to overcome this minority that happens to be well-funded, well-armed, and ready to go out there and crack down, and has done it so many times over the years. They've practiced this for so long. But it is, Sean. It is a country that isn't, if it ever was, and I'm not sure if it was the case, but if it was a country that signed up freely to live the sort of theocratic system, today is not the case anymore. Uh-huh. This generation doesn't want to live in a theocracy.
Caucasus is a particularly sensitive area. In terms of what Iran wants, at the very least, what they don't want is to lose the border they have with Armenia. Right now, as you know, Azerbaijan and Turkey and others are in the discussion of how to create regional interconnected economic routes and how to bring about permanent peace. And one idea that certainly Iran seems to take seriously is that there will be a corridor connecting the Republic of Azerbaijan to the exclave of Nakhchivan that would go through what is modern day state of Armenia, and that happens to be Iran's border with Armenia. So the Iranians have come out and said, this is our red line. We do not want to lose our border with Armenia. And I think to your point about the military drills, the Revolutionary Guards, Iran is saying, we will take action if necessary. So it's part of the posturing and the brinkmanship that has been going on in the last 2 years by Iran and other countries like Turkey and Azerbaijan.
Look, I mean, in terms of the contract between the ruling class and a people, a authoritarian or totalitarian regime that comes to mind that decided to make adjustments for its own survival is Communist Party of China, which in the late 70s decided to open up the economy. They didn't liberalize on the political front, but they created plenty of opportunities for China to prosper, become what it is today. In Iran's case, the regime has not, for various reasons, wanted to liberalize politically or economically. And I'll tell you why, for example, it can't do so economically, because Khamenei's foreign policy, which is this sort of militant Islamism of standing up to what he calls the imperialist powers, the United States and so on, basically makes it impossible for Iran to be a mainstream player on the global stage when it comes to economic integration with other nations. So he's kind of, because of his ideology, he's made that impossible. So Iran really could be a top 20 economy in the world if it was playing the role that it can play. But Khamenei and the regime, by and large, and I would say before even Khamenei in 89, his predecessor Khomeini, these are not figures who ever prioritize the economy.